Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Go. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. How are you today? You're at your favorite spot, the location, the place where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Today we have Bev Martin. Bev specializes in neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy. I like to talk to hypnotherapists because we just had a conversation in the green room about taking someone down, but trusting that individual, allowing them to take you into this transcendental state. Because your body is not going to do, and your mind and your subconscious mind, what it's already lined up to do. It's not going to deviate from that. But you do need a guide. You do need a facilitator to help you walk through the steps, to be relaxed, to absorb the information that you're about to process. The conversation, the neuro-linguistic programming, NLP that you're going to have, and the suggestions that are going to pop up in your mind afterwards. But then, after you've been hypnotized and talked to, what are you going to do with this information? Really, that's the key thing. Are you going to be authentic and true to yourself and actually apply it? Are you going to put this in your toolbox so that when you're in a discombobulated situation that you can go back to it and recall? We're going to talk to Bev about that and a whole lot more. Welcome to the show. How are you, Bev?
Hi, April. Thanks for the invitation. I'm so excited to get to have a chat with you.
I'm glad to talk to you too. So tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, I'll say a bit since you've mentioned NLP and hypno. I'll say how I do those things a little differently than most people might expect. But I'm a master practitioner of NLP. I'm a facilitator of, okay, lots of words alert, clean language and symbolic modeling, which is a lot more marvelous than it sounds. And then as a coach and a hypnotherapist, the way I show up is I love to help people find the gems inside of themselves that they forgot they had. You know how our good friends help us remember what we forgot? And so I love to show up when someone is in doubt or they've forgotten the essence of who they are. And I like to think that my tools are a mirror and a flashlight. The mirror is to say, here's you, here's the truth of who you are, and it will save you in every moment. And here's my flashlight for like, you might have missed a spot, or perhaps I heard you using disempowering language, and I'm going to shine my little flashlight on that, and we're going to attend to that. So I love to be present with people to help them see what's good, true, and beautiful about themselves, especially in the moments when they need access to their resources.
Absolutely. And, people will do things. I don't know. Maybe they'll take a nutrition class, for example, but then they never practice the nutrition. They've just
Right.
been there. Or we use this term, are you at church or are you in church? Are you
Ah, I
there
like
just to,
that.
to be a part of the crowd, or are you really absorbing what it takes?
Mm.
And you have to show up, brains. Bev can give you all of the clean language that you want, but if you do not do the practical application and show up and do the work, it's all in vain. How did you find yourself in this space?
Well, I was always interested in how people think. I grew up in South Africa back in the day in a very contentious climate. I was very aware as an intuitive and a medium. I was always very aware of like what the feeling was in the room. So I would notice like, when that person speaks, their words aren't quite lining up with like what I'm noticing or feeling. So I became very attentive in a kind of a self-protective way, honestly. It's like, what's my sense of this person? Am I safe here? Or, what are we dealing with? So I became really curious. I wanted to study how are people amazing? And so in my youth, I had a lot of really interesting kind of woo-woo experiences. And then in my 20s, I went to study psychology. And psychology was interesting, but the class that I was in was really focused on pathology.
Mm.
Here's all the ways the wheels can fall off. And, I was like, well, I want to know about how magnificent human beings are, what we're capable of under pressure, what happens when we think all is lost. And so, in many ways, when I found neurolinguistic programming, that was when the lights came on for me because it was more about excellence. And so I studied about human beings and then clean language, which isn't just that one never says a dirty word. Clean language was developed by a student of Milton Erickson, a hypnotherapist from New Zealand, back in the day, a Maori man. And he wondered what would happen if a therapist, any kind of therapist, hypno or any kind of therapist, instead of the therapist bringing their knowledge, wisdom into the room, what would happen if they facilitated the wisdom and the knowledge of the client to emerge? And so I studied that work, which I absolutely love. And so it means that my work is to find the treasures inside of my client. They're not that hard to find. It's often the client has forgotten where they are. And my job is to help them access that. And it's more transformational. So, in many ways, I agree with you. Some of the classes we take, we've got a binder. I've got several on my shelves. We've got the binder, we've got the notes. But I love to do deeper kind of work that doesn't require the person now to say, what did I learn? That the transformation happens in the moment. And often that can be a belief change.
Right, right. Because we're programmed. Every
Absolutely.
day we're programmed by the media, by
Yes.
by our food, by our circle of influence, by our spouse, by our children. They always give us uh, that second guessing.
Right.
But what do we do with that? Sometimes I totally ignore it.
Good for you. Well, see, that's an important thing because my sense is that almost the whole first part of our lives, depending on where that is for each of us, we do get the message that best you fit in. I grew up with school uniforms.
Right.
And then the day we would have one day a year where you could come in your own clothes, and we all called each other, like, what are you wearing? So we might have as well still have been in a uniform on that day.
That's
So much of the first half of our life, we're taught here's how to behave, here's how to fit in, sit down and be quiet, do. And my sense is the soul says, all right, I'll go along with this because some of the rules, it is good if we all know which side of the road to drive on, for example,
absolutely
you know. But the soul says, I didn't come all the way from the stars to just fit in. I came to show up. I came to bring love. I came to say, I don't think it is that way for me. So it requires courage to be, like you say, sometimes I'm not going to do it because when you're listening to something deeper inside of you that has a different imperative, a different reason for being, then we say, oh, thank you for those rules. They helped me learn to cross the street, but I got bigger things to do.
exactly bigger aspirations.
Yeah.
So when you work with your clients, the first thing I'm sure that you do is do an intake.
Yes. Although, depending on which kind of work, so I do coaching where I would do an intake, and I'm really curious then to hear like, where do you find yourself and where would you like to be? Sometimes people don't know the second half of that, and that's okay. That's why I'm there is to say, this is where you find yourself and what's possible. I love to help people dream a little bigger than they might have.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm doing intuitive work, I don't take an intake. We kind of dive in together, and then I'm using my sense of connection with spirit, my curiosity. Then I'm open to like, just recently I worked with a woman, and I kept seeing intuitively behind her a horse nuzzling her, and it was lovely. And often I think could be metaphor. Obviously, it's a metaphor, but it could be, often horses will show up as an logo, an emblem, symbol for teacher. So I
Mhm.
had that playing in my mind. And then as we finished the session, I said to her, I mustn't forget to tell you, I keep seeing a horse behind you. And she went, her mouth dropped open and she said, the house she lives in is a very beautifully refurbished barn. And it used to be where horses lived. So in the intuitive work, I have to let go of that mind that thinks it knows anything and
Right,
be
right.
completely open. And what I love is bringing those two together in coaching and in intuitive work.
Mhm.
Often the reading will give someone a perspective. It's a message from our soul. And the soul is unlimited. The soul has a great sense of humor. The
Yeah,
soul is courageous. And it's as if in the reading we get the blueprint. Here, go do this. And then in coaching, I feel like I'm holding someone's hand a little bit more where they're going, but how do I navigate what people expect of me?
right.
Or, if I suddenly become this, what about that?
Mhm,
So in those
mhm.
two kinds of work, we're using the soul as a guide. And one is this uplifted, unlimited vision. And then with coaching, it's a little bit more like, let's go one step at a time, the way our human self can handle it.
Did you start out with the intuitive work and then branch into coaching or vice
Yes.
versa?
Intuitive work first.
Intuitive work first.
It
Because you
came
had
and
to
got
find your
me.
connection. Yeah.
It came and got me. I kept having experiences as a kid. And one of them, I'll say, was I was about 6 or 7. My grandfather was in the hospital near our home, and my grandmother was staying with us so she could be on hand. He'd had a very bad stroke. And she was sleeping in my bed, and I was sleeping on the floor on cushions.
Mm.
And every day we'd go and see my grandpa. And in the wee hours, it was still dark outside. My grandpa walked in. I was like, "Oh, you're better." He was radiant. He was happy. He was calm. I was like, "Whoa, you're really better."
Mm.
And I saw him walk over to my grandmother and kiss her. And the room was so full of light. And I was so happy. I'm like, "Yahoo!" And then the hospital called to say that he had passed.
Mm. Mm.
And I
I
could not,
believe
I
it.
kept,
I believe it.
yeah. And I kept going, but, like, don't worry, like, he's good. Then we're like, shh, shh, you'll upset your grandmother. And so from that early age, I was like, how would that be upsetting? And everyone's a boo-hooing, like, I don't understand. And
Exactly.
so I had a lot of experiences like that. So the intuition, um, my father's criticism often was like, you're just too sensitive. And so I
Mhm,
had to
mhm.
figure out, okay, how do I stop being so sensitive? Or is there a purpose to this sensitivity, which I discovered in my 20s there absolutely is.
Mhm.
So the intuitive work has always been a part of me. It took me until my 20s to figure out how to have it be purposeful and useful.
Absolutely.
But I'm so very grateful for it.
How do you cleanse yourself? Because when you're an open vessel
Right.
for this, there is a lot of forces. And I
It's true.
ask this people all the time. All of them are not positive.
That's
All of
right.
them aren't a bed of roses and
Oh,
peace.
absolutely right.
There are forces that are destructive. There are some that are mean. There
Yeah.
are some that are manipulative. Those forces don't have to be an a spirit out there. It could be your next
Right.
neighbor.
Oh, that's right.
How how do you cleanse yourself and make sure that you're a clear vessel so that you
Yes.
can work in the highest and greatest good for yourself in addition to your clients?
You've put your finger on the very most important piece. And it has to do with upliftment, of resonating with the highest and the best. When I first started doing work with my intuition, I worked on a platform in a church where we would do readings for people. Would just come to this person and just felt moved. I need to say this to you and that to that one. You have no idea it's a great exercise in trust. But in that spiritual fellowship, there was community with people who were uplifted and of like mind. There was music and prayer. And so all of that had happened, to assist with that prevention being better than cure or spiritual hygiene. The first time I ever did a reading, not in the church, I was like, wow, how blah. Right.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it was, and so what I've learned over years of experience and also having to run into bugaboos and challenging
My mother used to
situation.
say that, the bugaboos.
That's a bugaboo. Well,
Yep,
there are bugaboos. And so knowing how to use spiritual hygiene, raising one's vibration, resorting to prayer, light, music helps tremendously. And then prevention being better than cure.
absolutely.
So being very
Absolutely.
clear on like on what side of the neighborhood am I hanging out and for what
Exactly.
purpose?
So tell us a little bit about your coaching program.
Sure.
Everyone has a different, a different playbook for their team members.
Yes.
And coaching is very individualized. I get some people that want to interview and they want to put out these programs and they want to have 10 or 12 people. And I'm saying you can't juggle all those balls in the air because when you're dealing and you're coaching someone, you are going into their psyche. They have their trust in you. I mean, look at the
Right.
Olympic athletes. Come
Wow.
on, they trust their coach
Yep.
and you see how they talk to themselves, and that's what I like to watch. It's not even the race, it's how they prepare themselves, how
Right.
they're just psyched up for it. How do you work with your clients in your coaching program?
I'd love to say in a similar way, but the way I love to work is to first really, really listen and to get an idea of, how has someone structured their reality. So the one of the definitions of NLP is the study of the structure of subjective experience, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, how have I made my world? And is that working for me? And how might I adjust it? So mostly I'm really, really listening and then getting very clear on what is it that this person would like to have instead of what's going on. And then it's completely individual for each person. I work with some people who are, very capable, competent, stressed, who live stressful lives in corporate. Many of my clients are like myself, who are independent business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we think matters. It's going to, show up every single day. So
And then
listening
you're
carefully.
dealing with the individual too that suffers with the imposter syndrome
Right.
or
I
the
can
people
relate to
pleaser.
that.
The people pleaser. They've got to, or the self-righteous. I have to
Right.
be at the top of my game all the time. I can't let anybody see my vulnerability. I can't see my weakness. And it cracks me up when people say I'm a perfectionist. I kind of look at them as a little insecure.
Right.
You're always chasing that high. You're
Brene
always
Brown talks a lot
yeah,
about
you're
that.
always ticking another box.
Yeah.
And
And
it's not perfect. That's how we learn is by our mistakes or misdeeds
and the
or
messy middle. Yeah. The messiness.
absolutely.
I remember I wish I could quote her exactly. I can't remember, but Brene Brown said something about that search for perfection. And I was leaving we have the best library in the world. I was leaving the library already cracking the book and it said something about perfectionism. I was like, oh, yep, she nailed it. Because there is that sense that when we're in the fit in model, when we're still in that first part of life, when we think we're going to go, we do this and then that, and then have the perfect this and then the perfect that, and then ding, a bell will ring.
Absolutely.
You've achieved life, like as if it were a video game. It's like, yeah, it's not like that at all. It's more on the vertical. It's like, can I be, can you be your true self? And who is that?
Right.
You talk about people pleasing. Oh man, I've done years of people pleasing until I realized that the one person who was seldom pleased was then me,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
You sell yourself short.
Yeah,
You sell yourself short. And it makes you unhappy once you look back on it. And sometimes people become bitter or they have
right,
these unrealistic expectations of others.
right,
Well, I mean, you should have absolutely done this, that, or the other because I did X, Y, Z. Well,
right.
no,
It's like, yep,
that's not how it played out.
we
That's
grow
not
and we
the
learn.
script.
Right.
Exactly.
We grow and
Exactly.
learn.
So let's ask you some fun questions, Ben, because I love to do that. I like to get to know people, um, a little bit more intensely. What was your career before you started doing this?
Corporate training
Wow. So you
in
were
an
already HR,
oh,
already in the
big time
psychology of it.
in the insurance industry and in a big bank in South Africa. The fun part of corporate training was I got to make videos. So I was in the audiovisual unit.
Mm.
So when international bankers would come to South Africa, I got to go when they would go on safari and everything to make the video for them to take back.
Oh,
Because
wow.
these were times when South Africa was being sanctioned. So it was a big deal when international bankers would come. So I was in the audiovisual unit, which was great. I had been to drama school in my when I was studying psychology. I studied drama and theater and film. And so one fun gig was that they would send me into banks to try and get a loan out of a bank manager who should never have given the loan to see if I could cajole them to give me the loan. And then they'd get feedback on it. So that was super fun. And it was a way to use my acting skills.
Well, and that's really important. You said that you lived in South Africa during, I'm sure, apartheid.
Yes,
That was tough because I just see you being a very loving humanitarian
yes,
and then having this intuitive insight that you can
right.
go into a room and feel when these people are being disingenuous on
Correct.
either side,
Correct.
but also seeing the revelation of the revolution and the uprising of people.
Yes.
How did that change your heart?
Hugely, hugely, because that was an important part too of the difference between fitting in and showing up. There was a lot I just didn't understand growing up. And as a child, you go, but why are those people going in that door and like,
Right,
and
right,
there was never an explanation that really made sense, of course. And I would be so aware, especially of my dad, because my dad was a really good explainer to me of what was going on behind the scenes. Because, of course, it was also very dangerous to show up protests. Like when I went to university, he said, and no matter what you know to be true, please do not be anywhere near where anyone's burning a flag or anything. Like you're not safe. Don't do that.
mm-hmm.
But I would watch him with interest to see how he would be different with different people. And I mean, he had his own integrity, but I would think, I know that when he's with this person that he knows he's safe and comfortable with, I know what he actually knows to be true. And then I would see him in a different setting and think like, he didn't speak, you know. So I
Had
would
to
just
send his
notice that.
representative.
Right, exactly. Or I would be like, so I sort of watched that with interest, not really knowing what I was really looking at. But it was challenging to grow up in a place where there were so many contradictions. Even in the language, and I love language, how a phrase would come about to call something a certain thing and would be like, that's not what that is. That's just a term
Right,
you all are making up so that we, to make it more palatable in some way. So I can hardly even sift what it is I learned from that, but it did give me, as I became older, in my 20s and beyond, it gave me the strength to go, what I know in here is
right,
true for me.
right, right.
And I have to rely on it because if I get carried away with like who's saying what, well, that must be right because it's in the newspaper.
Right. And I bring this up because what's going on in the United States, it's so
Right.
much vitriol
Right.
and it's a distraction
Yep.
from what is real and what is fake.
Right. Look at
I
how
went to,
all
and
those
it's a
lines
matter
are
of
blurred.
perception. I know I went to a big networking meeting and they had these questions on the wall and each one had to ask a question. Well, you know me, I raised my hand. I said,
Good for you.
what would be the effect and the result if all of us were required to tell the truth? We
Mm,
had to break off in these little groups and we had to discuss the question. You know what I found was more interesting than anything? Was not fact from fiction, but your perception
right.
of what fact or fiction
Right.
is
Well, and
and
look at
what has been ingrained in you
right.
and taught to you. I mean, again, my
Right.
husband was in the military and he had young sailors that would come that had never seen a black person in their life. They had never seen a black person. And I'm like, well, were they under a rock? They
Wow.
didn't understand the texture. They didn't understand the dialect. They didn't understand the color of the skin.
Well, that we live in
Just did
a
not understand.
multicultural country.
Right. No,
Wow. Well, there's two things that come to mind. One, I have a friend here. When I said to her at one point, I said, I don't think I can speak on any of these, having grown up in South Africa. And she said, contrary to that, because you grew up in South Africa, you do speak. I was like, okay, point taken.
I tell people you don't have to put a bullseye on your back because I'm not going to be that angry black woman. I refuse. I'm going to make it a teachable moment.
Yes. I
Open
loved
it up.
I heard one of your stories, I think, in your podcast about that too. And
Yeah, I open it up for conversation. As long as you're
yes.
respectful,
Yes.
let's talk about it
Right.
because there might be something I'm missing.
Right.
It,
Well,
it, it's
that's
it's not just I'm the victim. No, I might
no.
really be missing a
Yes.
key point that I need to go in and take back under advisement.
Right. That curiosity that says, help me know, help me understand. Well, part of my studies with language, when you talk about perception, is, in various contexts, not always on the up and up, but say, for example, in law, they know the difference, the effect it has on a jury,
Oh yes,
right? If
yes,
they say, what speed was the car going when it crashed into the wall?
right.
It's going to be different when they ask, what do you think the speed of the car was going when it met that obstacle? So I'm very interested and I listen to the language but with care. It's like, oh, I can
Beautiful.
tell like what are they trying to have us think there?
Exactly, exactly. And it's those power adjectives because crash, you're automatically in shock. Yeah,
Right.
you
And
know,
it's making meaning. That word makes a different meaning than,
yes,
any other one that we could have
yes, it
chosen.
does. I
I
know I
mean,
was in a
most
jury room and that happened to me. That the person said, well, the person that we are looking to prosecute was impaired. We couldn't get past impaired. I said, each person, there's 12 of us and there's 13 of us. There's 13
right.
of us. Each one of us, tell me what does the word impaired mean to you?
Good question.
And we convicted him
Wow.
because of what that meant. It didn't mean
Right.
sloppy, drunk, this, and they were altered in some kind of way.
Wow.
It was crazy. So language is extremely important. And how we speak to our children,
Yes.
how
Yes.
we speak to, do we speak to them in a love language?
Right.
A language that they can understand, whether we agree or disagree. If
Right.
you are open to listening to your children, not just listening, but also hearing. My daughter is 36, and I was at a party at her house last night with a bunch of her friends. And I was like, okay, am I going to listen or am I going to hear what they're saying?
Right.
And I
Right.
said, well, let me absorb some of this because I wasn't with it. But that's 3 decades behind
Oh,
me.
yeah. Well, I realized with my little girl, I used to walk to the bus stop to meet her. And it was right around the time I was studying clean language. I'd walk to the bus stop and I would do all the things. I'd be like, "How was your day?" Blah, blah, blah. And I had all the words, and she was be fine. She was like on the witness protection program,
Mm,
minimal information. And then when I was studying clean about listening, I thought, I'm trying to show her what kind of day I hope she had instead of actually listening. And so the very first day that I had my new way of being, I walked to the bus stop. I showed her with my nonverbals how happy I was to see her. And I didn't ask anything. I was waiting for her to talk.
mm,
She was very suspicious of me.
mhm,
And we walked home in a kind of a like, silence, but that was fine. Day two, similar to that. Day three, she said, "You know what, Mom?" And started to tell me a story. That was what I was waiting for. And I knew enough to, shush, listen, and then even when to comment back, which we learn in clean language, is only to use the words that that person brought to the table. Don't add any of my own stuff.
right.
And one of the things she'd said was, this boy, whatever his name was, he's really funny. And I was like, oh, is he? And what kind of funny? Right. And so a quality of listening where we stay with the person's experience enriches the whole conversation.
Absolutely.
Imagine if we could do that countrywide.
Just they don't get it. They don't get it. So if you were an appliance in the kitchen of all places, what appliance would you be?
Oh my gosh, that is a good question. What appliance would I be? I love my kitchen. I love to cook. This is so silly. It's coming to my mind. It would be my what do you call vacuum sealer.
Really?
I love that thing.
Exactly
I
what that
think
thing.
I would be a vacuum sealer because I like to keep what's inside pure.
Oh, that's sweet.
What a strange
That's
question,
sweet.
April.
Yeah, I would be the tea kettle.
See
I
that?
love to be hot and spot out.
Look at you.
I'd be the tea kettle. I change sometimes. I was with a guest yesterday and she told me she'd be a rolling pin.
Oh,
I had
because
never heard that. She said because it expands the space, it creates shape, there's pressure, there's texture. And I was like, I
I
had never
love
had a rolling
that.
pin before. So that's neat. If you were a car, what kind of car would you be, Bev?
Ooh, I would be a VW Bug Cabriolet.
What?
I love those because they have a face. You know, if you look at a VW Bug, I think it's the innocent archetype, but it's got the big round eyes. But I
Yeah.
would love it when the top could come down because of making it convertible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a
So
bright,
this is what I
fun
would be.
color.
I'd be a VW van.
Look at you, see? That is awesome.
And it would be 1974. I'd have a mattress in the back with a hookah pipe, listen to some
Oh,
Jimi
look at
Hendrix. All right.
you.
I love it. And it was funny because for my birthday, a dear friend of mine and her kids got me this 1,000 piece puzzle to put together of all VW vans. I was
Look
like,
at
oh my
you.
goodness.
Oh my God,
So I was
this is
in my element.
fabulous.
If you could time travel, go back
Oh,
to the past, stay here in the present, or projectile to the future, where would
mm.
you land?
I would be going to the future.
I go to the future too.
Don't you? I'd want to go to the future, but I'd want it to be the one that we dream of, the one where anything is possible, where peace prevails. Yeah, I'd have a big agenda for it, but I'd go to the future.
I go to the future too. Do you believe in alternative life sources and beings in our universe and
I
galaxy?
do.
I
I
do
do.
too. I do
I
too.
do. And here in Oregon, we have a festival every year called the UFO Festival, which is
Oh,
such a hoot. And there's a parade and people dress up their pets and everything. It is really fun. I'm there mostly for the music and the costumes, but they do have talks. My husband goes to the serious talks with scientists about all sorts of things. I'm there for the fun and games, but I absolutely know to be true that there's so much more to this.
it is. I mean, we cannot think small and we've got to go beyond the moon
Right,
and Mars,
right.
but we're making it. But, we're
Yeah.
making progress in
and
our
and
life.
even in our own ecosystem, like, you know, I don't believe there's ordinary reality. I think we live in something extraordinary. And once we get to that place, it's often I meet my clients at that place where they're feeling a little like, is this it? Is this all there is? Like, I thought there would be cake.
Right.
And so we meet at that place where they have done all that. I've checked all the boxes and I still don't feel like I thought I might. And so that's when I love to invite people to reconnect to what their heart has always wanted to say, to what their spirit knows to be true, and then to make what appears to be ordinary, to find what is extraordinary. And we are extraordinary when we know
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Exactly. I mean, we're different than the animal, four-legged animal people,
Yes.
because there are still a lot of beasts. And in closing, Bev, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you
Wow.
want to be remembered?
I would say I would love to be remembered as someone who helped people find their true selves. I would love to be remembered for wisdom and fun. I once had to put my name on a name tag as you would be really truly called, and I put light bearer goofball, and I think those two are not exclusive. I'd
Oh,
like to be remembered for bringing light and having fun.
well, you have brought a lot of light, a lot of love, and a lot of fun here to us on the edge. Please tell my brains how to get in contact with you. I'd love for them to do the deep dive, have a conversation, consultation, even work with Bev. I mean, that voice inflection just encapsulates you. It's just smooth, it's relaxing, and that's what you want in a hypnotherapist. That's the first thing I listen for is their voice inflection. Is
Oh,
are you able to take me into a place of calm, a place of peace? Because that is a place that you share. And I want you to share in
oh,
this experience with me. I don't want you to just guide me. I want you to
right.
go with me. I want you to hold my hand. And I do believe that you're a hand holder. Tell my
Oh,
brains how to get in contact with you.
well, best place is my website, which is same as my name, bevmartin.com. And on the website, you can download, if you like, my 15 minutes to clarity guide, which is a very brief combination of NLP and intuition. When you're in a little sticky spot, it can just help to know, have you considered this? Are you thinking this way? And so my 15 minutes to clarity guide is available there as a gift. So bevmartin.com is a good place to find me.
Well, Brains, we're going to put all of her information at the back of the interview. Please go in, follow her on social media, love, like, share, and subscribe. Get a taste of it. Social media is the low hanging fruit. That way, you're able to go in after you've listened to this interview and assess and follow. Ask questions. Ask questions maybe that Bev has not answered. Maybe these are questions that have never been asked of her. This is how we learn, grow, and develop. This is how we stimulate this thing called the brain. Thank you
Love
so
it.
much for being here with us. I wish you the highest and greatest good and
Thank you so
abundant
much,
light and
April.
love. Okay.
Thank you so much, April. You are a light in the dark. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Bye, brains. Turn your light up.
Yay.